and welcome to your most authoritative evening political show, Hot News. We are live on Pan-African Television. We're also live on Facebook at Pan-African Television, on YouTube at Pan-African Television, as well as 48 African countries. You can join in the conversation by sending in your views, comments, and contributions on a WhatsApp/text line. I'll be reading those messages up for you. Those of you watching us on Facebook can share the Facebook Live for other people to also watch tonight's edition of the program. Don't forget to leave your suggestions, questions, contributions, and all of that on our socials, especially on Facebook, and I'll be reading those out for you as well. My name is Justice Appear. Tonight on Hot News, in fulfillment of Section 28 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, the Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam, has presented the Mid-Year Fiscal Policy Review to Parliament yesterday. I'll bring you excerpts of that. I'll be bringing you reactions from the minority. I'll be bringing you reactions from the majority in Parliament as well. Well, he mentioned some few things. We'll be engaging, experts, on this matter, at least to see if indeed we are on the right track as a country in terms of our economy. But before then, let me bring you excerpts from Parliament from the Finance Minister. We'll be right back.
What I'm saying is that, yes,
many people disappointed and uninspired. It gives no hope to the people of Ghana, and that anything this government had...
Mr. Speaker, the last 2 years have been extremely challenging globally, and Ghana has not been an exception. The difficult economic environment has truly affected businesses and families, particularly the vulnerable in our society. These challenges have severely affected households, increased cost of living, and limited the creation of job opportunities. Our young people continue to seek employment opportunities beyond what the state can provide. Mr. Speaker, it has indeed been a difficult time, and I deeply empathize with our fellow Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, over the last 2 years, government has embarked on a number of decisive measures to get us back on the path of fiscal consolidation, economic stability, and growth. And I'm happy to note that these policies we have implemented are yielding the expected results. Growth continues to exceed our expectations. The 4.7% growth rate reported by the Ghana Statistical Service for the first quarter 2024 exceeds the 3.1% recorded in the same period in 2023. Inflation is declining. End June inflation rate of 22.8%, a reduction of 31 percentage points from the December 2022, which confirms the target of 15% by end 2024 is possible. Exchange rate has largely stabilized compared to December 2022, despite the recent pressures. The 18.6% depreciation rate to the US dollar as of June 2024 represents an improvement over the 22% recorded for the same period last year. And gross international reserves reached 3.1 months of import cover as at end June 2024, against 2.5 months of import cover in the same period last year. Mr. Speaker, it is evident that we are on the right trajectory. The economy is rebounding stronger than anticipated. The choices we've made and the policies we are implementing are yielding results. We've reversed the negative trends. All the indicators are looking better. I want to assure you that we will stay on this path and continue to make the right choices.
Right, so that was the Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam. He presented the media budget to Parliament yesterday, but both minority and majority caucuses in Parliament have been reacting to the presentation. Now let's listen to Honorable KCL Ato-Forson, Minority Leader, on the presentation that was made yesterday.
It leaves many people disappointed and uninspired. It gives no hope to the people of Ghana, and that anything this government had said and have done over the last 7.5 years, they've done nothing to reverse the negative trend. In the last 8 years, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government have burdened the ordinary Ghanaian and businesses with a number of taxes, making Ghana a high tax regime. These taxes include e-levy, COVID levy, an effective VAT rate of about 22%, a distorted value-added tax regime, a bad-tin tax, a boiler tax, in other words, a sanitation levy, a high tax on petroleum product, an emission levy, a high import taxes, burdensome fees and charges across all sectors of the economy, and over 40 new taxes in the last 7.5 years. These burdensome taxes have made Ghana unattractive for investment and foreign direct investment. As a result, many Ghanaian businesses are relocating to Togo and Ivory Coast, among others. In fact, last week I heard of a company moving from Ghana to Benin Republic. Ghana has lost so many jobs opportunities as a result of the relocation of these businesses. This adds to the already high unemployment situation due to the fact that the government has failed to create new jobs. People can simply not make ends meet. In fact, the kromo ayeshe. The kromo ayeshe. That is the true state of our country. The high food prices are one of the major problems facing the people of Ghana today. Yet, this media review did not provide a roadmap to address the escalating food prices. Planting for Food and Jobs was a monumental failure, despite the billions of Ghana cedis that have been spent so far on the program. The greatest threat to our national security today is youth unemployment and food insecurity. These two factors are fueling the loss of confidence in our democracy, revealed in the recent Afrobarometer report on Ghana. Yet, this media review failed to address these two major concerns. We are aware of the hopelessness of our youth who cannot count on the government for jobs. We are also aware of the suffering of the ordinary Ghanaians who cannot afford 3 square meals a day. We are aware of the unbearable hardships confronting the good people of Ghana and businesses. We are aware of the collapsed state-owned enterprises such as the Ghana Cocoa Board. In fact, we are aware of the insolvent Bank of Ghana. We are aware. We are also aware that the rich have become a middle class. The middle class has become poor, and the poor has become poorer, with the World Bank estimating that 33% of Ghana's population will move to extreme poor by the year 2025. We are also aware that this government is leaving behind a high tax regime. And overall, we are also aware, among others, of the poor governance that this government is leaving behind. The NDC pledges, our pledge is to confront these challenges head-on, beginning January 7th, 2025. Thank you very much.
So that was the Minority Leader, Dr. KCL Ato-Forson. Now let's take some reaction from the majority as well.
What I'm saying is that, yes, we have not created a perfect system, but we have a far, far, far better system in place than what we came to meet. What is the NDC saying? Criticizing and saying what they want to say. But so far, they've not been able to introduce any social intervention program. Not even in their campaigns are they trying to tell us that, oh, they have this all-important initiative to turn the corner. They have none. We've listened to them over and over again. Nothing innovative is coming from them. Now, what is Dr. Bawumia telling us? Dr. Bawumia says that, look, he's going to anchor his developmental agenda on digitalization. Because in today's world, everything is digitalized. So if you want to run an innovative economy, an economy that will create jobs for the private sector, you necessarily would have to go digital. And for him, that is what he's going to use as a major trump card policy to ensure transformation in every aspect of our economy. What the ordinary Ghanaian will say is that we won't pay we na pay there. So we are on course. We are going to debate on the issues. And by the way, we are calling on President Mahama to accept the invitation by Dr. Bawumia for a debate. We don't want politics of insult, name calling, insinuations and all. If indeed he is determined to come back and he wants to tell Ghanaians that he's a change man, I am calling on him to stand shoulder to shoulder with Dr. Bawumia and debate on the issue. Ato has nothing to say, and indeed had nothing to say. Is the reason why he came attacking. You realize that upon all that he said, it amounted to nothing. He couldn't address any particular issue. Look, what the NDC often forgets to tell Ghanaians is that when we came into office, we repealed a number of laws, tax laws that they had initiated and enacted. We repealed them. Some of the taxes too, we reduced the percentage that Ghanaians were being charged. So what is he talking about? They never faced a Russian-Ukraine situation which has disrupted global trade and everything is going haywire. They came with all the fundamentals going in their favor, went on the IMF program, which derailed. Around this time, 2016, the IMF program had derailed. IMF came into Ghana and walked away. And like I always say, we cannot have a perfect system. But at least, if you are putting us side by side with the NDC, I can tell you, any day, we are far better in terms of policies, in terms of governance.
So that was the majority leader. Also right there, we've listened to both minority and majority views on the budget that was presented in Parliament, the media budget review that was presented in Parliament by the Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam. Now let's cross over to the phone lines and speak to a financial economist and senior lecturer with the University of Professional Studies, Dr. Boakye Yiadom. Doc, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Hot News. Hello, Doc, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening,
hello,
doctors, and good evening to your viewers as well. And thank you for having me.
Right, Doc, if you can hear me, tell us your general overview of yesterday's presentation that was made in Parliament by the Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam. Any hope for the good people of Ghana in that media budget review?
Well, from where I sit, the figures as presented by the minister show signs of opportunities that the country is pointing to a certain direction. First of all, we'll look at the macroeconomic dynamics that he presented. The GDP in the first quarter growing at about 4.7%, which was the highest since COVID. And inflation has gone down to 22.8%. And I should say that when we say inflation is going down, it doesn't mean that you go to the market tomorrow and prices of goods and services have been reduced. What it means is that price will be going up, but the rate of growth has declined. It's just like driving. And instead of driving at 60 kilometers per hour, you have reduced to about 22 kilometers per hour. You are still moving forward. However, the rate of growth or the rate of the speed has been slowed. And that's what we mean by a decline in the inflation figures. And also, with the exchange rate, in nominal terms, we've not done well in managing the exchange rate. But comparatively, the year-to-date depreciation is around 18.6, which generally is better than where we are coming from, where we're doing over 20%. You see, one thing about economic figures is that we cannot say, as a financial economist, I cannot say that somebody's life is better or worse. But I can do a comparative analysis to tell us where we are and where the figures are pointing towards. So indeed, the figures may be different from the feelings that people are feeling currently. But from the microeconomic indicators that have been presented, it's pointing to a direction that the country has an opportunity to return to pre-COVID era. For example, the gross international reserve, which used to be less than 3, we were doing around 2 months, and even at a point we were doing like 1 month. As the figures presented, the gross international reserve for import cover is about 3 months. They have 3.1, which is better than where we are coming from. We want to be doing like 5 to 6 months, but at least there are signs of growth, that things can be improved. So that is at the macroeconomic side. Then we come to government spending, which most often in a budget period, there's budget overrun, that governments spend more than what they have been decided to spend.
Right.
You realize that the overall budget deficit is around 21.3 billion Ghana cedis. In GDP terms, it's about 0.2% in terms of the primary deficit. What it means is that government, in a way, is trying to live beyond its means. And the hope is that if this trajectory is continuing, I mean, we will not have a huge budget deficit. So in a whole, we will say that government has been disciplined, and government is trying to live within its means to close the budget deficit. Then you look at government total expenditure. In any case, budget deficit should give us a good picture. But government budgeted or targeted to spend about 104.8 billion Ghana cedis. But they spend less than that. That is the actual spending for the first half, around 95.9 billion Ghana cedis. There's a reduction in how much government anticipated to spend. In terms of revenue mobilization, government could not achieve the target of 76.1 billion Ghana cedis. They did a little below it, that is around 74, so there is a difference of about 1.2 billion Ghana cedis, which generally is better. I mean, to be able to collect about 95% of what you anticipated to collect. I think government revenue mobilization is also on point. Sorry. Then I'll also look at I'll pick on the debt side. You know, in last year, December, the government debt to GDP, or in nominal terms, government debt was around 600 billion Ghana cedis. You know, as of last year, the total debt, and currently the debt is around 700 billion Ghana cedis. And it's actually 742 billion Ghana cedis, which is 70.6% of the GDP. Now, we need to find out what has caused the increase from around 600 billion to 742 billion. What it means is that the debt has gone up over 140 billion. The increase as presented by the minister is largely due to the 22% increase in debt is largely due to the exchange rate depreciation. What it means is that going into the next half, we expect government to put in necessary steps to address the cedi depreciation. What it means, it further implies that if government even decide not to borrow more, the cedi depreciation will add up to our debt stock, and it's worrying. I mean, and we need to be able to address it. But then there's also a positive news in the debt restructuring that is ongoing, especially the Eurobonds and the bilateral debt restructuring. In the whole, the debt restructuring they have been able to save about $7.2 billion. If the $7.2 billion were added to the original debt, the debt to GDP would have come to around 80. I estimated to be 80.6% without the debt restructuring. So I think the Minister of Finance and the team and his team they've done something better to negotiate to reduce the debt from about almost 80.6 to 70.6%. I mean, by saving $7.2 billion.
Doc, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I would love to take you back to the issue of inflation.
Okay.
The minister said inflation is declining, end June inflation rate of 22.8%, a reduction of 31% points from the December 2022, which confirms the target of 15% by end of 2024. Exchange rate has largely stabilized compared to December 22, despite the recent pressures. Now, at a point, the minister, sought to create the impression that they are gradually getting to 15% inflation by December 2024, and that at a point it went time high to 54-point-something%, which was their own creation. Should we see that as government doing something? Because if the previous government left inflation at 15.4%, and you've taken it to 54%, reduced it to 23-point-something%, and now we are seeing it at 22.3% or so, why should we applaud the minister? Why should we applaud this government for doing something?
Okay, so now with the inflation getting to the targeted 15, plus or minus 2, per the way inflation has performed for the first half, it indicates that we are likely to get to the 15 if it continues in that trajectory. I mean, so if we are even losing or if we are expecting price to stabilize, I mean, just like we are expecting exchange rate to relatively stabilize, when that stability comes, we are likely to go into the 15, which will be relative to what they came to meet.
But the question is, they met inflation at 15.4%. Now,
yes, I'm coming there.
Okay,
you met
right.
inflation around 16.
You can go ahead. So the expectation is that they would reduce inflation. Okay, now. Right. We can go ahead.
Yes. So if inflation, you pick inflation around 15%, and now you are doing 22.8%.
Yeah.
You see, the dynamics of governance differs, and every government and what it faces. I should say that looking at where inflation jumped to and where we are coming, there's every indication that inflation is on a downward trend. If inflation was on upward trend, assuming in previous months we were doing, let's say, 15, then we came to 18, then we are around 20, then it doesn't give hope. But we started the year around 20, above 25 or so. Then we've come to about 22. I mean, there's every indication that where it was left, I mean, it's likely that it will be achieved. However, I am even challenging this government not to even leave it at where they pick it from, because you came to power to be to offer something better. So we are expecting that at worst, inflation should even go down beyond what you picked it from.
Right.
Yes. So I anticipate from my projection, we will be able to go achieve the 15% plus or minus 2.
So now let's look at economic growth.
Okay.
The finance minister says, Mr. Speaker, global growth projections indicate a a moderation from 3.5% in 2022 to 3.3% in 2023. The trend is expected to vary slightly into 2024 with a growth of 3.2% and 3.3% in 2025 according to the July 2024 update in the World Economic Outlook. The forecast for sub-Saharan African point to an uptick from 3.4% in 2023 to 3.7% and 4.1% in 2024 and 2025 respectively. This growth trajectory is supported by the reversal of earlier anticipated weather-related shocks and ongoing improvement in supply conditions. But should you go ahead and read further, the finance minister is trying to see that per our current growth, we are on the right, path. Do you agree with the minister on that assertion?
Yes, you see, when the economy is recovering from, it's like a human being which probably have suffered some sickness and you are recovering, and different people react to recovery differently. In the same way, countries around the sub-Saharan will recover differently, and in Ghana, we were earlier anticipating that our recovery, our GDP growth will be around 2.5 or 2.3. But per the way the first quarter has grown to 4.7, the projection has been increased. What it means is that they're expecting the economy to recover faster than it anticipated. Okay. So the revised growth of 3.1, which is higher than the initial target when they read the budget in 2023. They were pegging around 2.3 and 2.5. There's every indication. They are sensitive. You see, when we were going through the challenges in 2021 and 2022, where the economy was deteriorating, it was the figures we were pointing to. That growth was used to be even sometimes about 5%, 3%. Then in 2022, I think the growth was less than 1%. I mean, in the same way, we can talk to the figures. Remember, I mentioned that the figures may be different from what people are feeling. However, the figures is the indication that we are getting better. Like a doctor reading, taking your temperature and telling you that based on the data I've taken, this is your health situation. So as a financial economist, I can say that based on the growth which we have seen in the first quarter, the 3% or the 3.1 projection is within means, and it shows clearly that the economy can recover faster than what was anticipated. If the measures that have been put in place from the first half of the year will continue, the government will continue to the next half of the year, we are expecting a certain level of recovery and even price stability in the country.
As a financial economist, can you explain to us why the finance minister on the exchange rate indicated that the Ghana cedi experienced a relatively moderate depreciation against major international currencies in 2023 compared to the previous years? Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 27.8%, 31.9%, and 30.3% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro, respectively in 2023. In the first half of 2024, the cedi depreciated by 18.6%, 17.9%, and 16.0% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro, respectively. These compares to a depreciation of 22.0%, 26.3%, and 23.8% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro, respectively, in the first half of 2023. Now, if you look at what he's saying over here, compared to the current situation on the ground, if you go to black markets, of course, you are likely to get the dollar at almost, at almost 16 cedis or something. Question is, how does that reflect what the finance minister is saying in this document? I want a further and better understanding.
All right, thank you. So, just as you see, in the cedi depreciation, it raises questions about the fundamentals of the Ghanaian economy.
Right.
Which is import driven. We import almost everything.
Right.
So the city will definitely depreciate to some extent. However, what government can do is to try and sustain the rate of depreciation in a certain sense.
Right.
And the city depreciating 18%, as you rightly mentioned, is relatively better. When we say relatively better, it means that when we compare to the previous years how it depreciated, the rate of depreciation is a bit lower.
Right.
I mean, in terms of percentage terms. But you see, you mentioned that when you go to the kiosk, the forex, kiosk to buy forex, it will be around 16 cities.
Yeah.
The BOG rate, as I think today, is around 14.76.
But is that the reality on the ground? Unfortunately, I mean, I'm not sure that's the reality because people are still buying it at 16 cities and all of that.
So why it is not that's the BOG rate reported. So if you are doing the interbank rate, if you are doing any business with a bank, that's the rate which will be used. But if we go to the forex, we're going to get at a 16.
Right.
And we are in a country where we have made forex more lucrative. So because the forex business is more lucrative, even if I have a CD and I buy forex, I'm making over 1 CD on every forex, every dollar that I buy.
Right.
Who will not buy the dollar? Elsewhere, the profit that the forex bureau may get is about 0.1 currency unit. But if you can make more than 1 CD on 1 currency unit you buy in the dollar or any other forex, any other foreign currency, it will motivate people to go into that business. You see, as economic agents, we are motivated by profit. So I am thinking, for us to see a certain level of stability in our city, we need to change the way forex activities are done.
Right.
Number one, I would suggest that government should reassess all forex bureau, minimize the extent of profiteering in forex bureau businesses. If I anticipate that the city is going to weaken against the dollar, I will hold on to my forex and wait for the city to depreciate, and I will sell it to get profit. So the system encourages hoarding. And hoarding will create shortage of the dollar in the system that will eventually cause the city to depreciate. Another thing, we should rather encourage people to use forex e-currency, whether the dollar e-currency.
All right.
You and I have a bank account.
Okay.
We have money that we keep in our bank account. We are not in a hurry to go
let's
and
be
withdraw
wrapping
it.
up.
If all of us go and withdraw our money today, the bank will close down.
Very well.
But when we check our bank account, we know that our money is safe. We can check on our mobile apps and all that to know how much we have. In the same way, if we create a system where people can have the dollar to transact business in electronic terms, it will minimize the physical demand for the dollar, and in that way, it will bring some level of stability. So we need a long-term system to address how forex is sold on the interbank market and how it is sold at the kiosk or at the forex rate. Other than that, it will be a lucrative business and people will go into it.
Right.
And there are 2 reasons why somebody may need the dollar. Number one, as a store of value.
Okay.
That is as an investment. And number 2, for transaction purposes.
Right, Doc.
So if people are taking the dollar as a store of value and they are investing in it, why not us regularizing it in the form of promoting an e-currency for them to have it in the form of an electronic way, rather than encouraging people to rather go for the physical currency, which creates shortage. I mean, so we have to have a whole discussion about it in a way to have it stabilized.
Doc, I would want to have you in the studio, but somewhere next week, if you have the time, we'll come back and discuss this. You know, I have some other guest in the studio that would also,
That's
contribute
fine.
to this discussion. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We are so grateful for your time. We've been speaking to Dr. Eric Boakye Yiadom. He is a financial economist and senior lecturer with the University of Professional Studies. I'll be joined in the studio by Elvis Botha, former national organizer of a New Patriotic Party. I don't know if he's still with the New Patriotic Party, but I'll ask him. My brother, how are you doing?
What a mischievous note to start from. Why do you think I'm not with the New Patriotic Party when I serve in the capacity I do?
In fact,
I will always be with the New.
You are not too active with the activities of the New Patriotic Party.
The background technical jobs taking a lot of my time.
Right.
And of course, I understand a lot of media people. Owing to my objective analysis of issue, wonders why in an election year, for a person of my caliber, riding to the feet I've gotten to in the NPP and in government, to still speak in the manner I do. But I think that we have a national agenda that supersedes the political priorities of each and every one of us.
Are you part of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia's campaign?
Of course, I'll always be part of anything positive that makes the NPP.
Are you part of the people who are making the promises? You are now on a promising spree.
I am part of the people who think that we should make credible promises for the furtherance of the objectives of Ghana.
So do you see this promise to be credible, where mobile phones are going to be made accessible to the good people of Ghana? We'll be buying them on high purchase, we'll be paying 1 cedis and 2 cedis every month.
What's this? The fundamental problem of the Ghanaian people is not a mobile phone.
Okay.
The fundamental problem with the Ghanaian people is hunger, is rent, is employment, and stuff like that. Those are the areas we should be holding conversations around.
So do you agree with people who are saying that that promise is senseless?
Well, I'm not sure that it was understood in the context within which my candidate sought to explain it. But I think it's one of the low moments in our political communication which we humbly would want to revise going forward. But the entire idea is just to say that things being equal, we should be able to pilot the kind of credit scoring system we have in Europe. For those of us who have studied in Europe and have lived in Europe, we are pretty much familiar with that system. But most importantly, beyond all of those debates, I love us to build a country where rather than acquire wealth, how do you call it, property in debt or on credit, we should be able to build wealth to be able to outrightly purchase these things. That is the point I want to make. Let's discuss why I am here, because this is not why I'm here.
I'm just moving on to that.
After you've missed me for a long while.
Yes, of course, I would have asked you a lot more questions on your campaign, but we'll really find time to come and do that. However, yesterday, the Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, MP, and Minister for Finance, presented the mid-year budget review, the 2024 mid-year fiscal policy review in Parliament. And he was painting a very, should I say, a glossy picture of our economy. Do you agree with, I'm sure you've perused the documents, do you agree with the Finance Minister?
Okay, so thank you, and let me say good evening more formally to our cherished viewers, all loved ones watching this evening. My love goes out to all of you. On the score of the particular issues relating the budget, I like to make my interventions from two perspectives.
Okay.
The first perspective is to be able to conduct a perusal of the figures put out there and to be able to analyze them to their fullest economic extent so that we know whether the picture painted is truly beautiful or not. Number two, for me, which is what we should be discussing, is to avoid this mistake of always talking about, figures, mathematical figures, jumping on serious, theoretically based economic jargons, when we should actually be postulating ideas that can enhance our economic fortunes. Because throughout the era of the third and fourth Republican place in Ghana, we've always had this go come and the economy is bad, and the next moment the economy is growing and recovering. We are back on the path of prosperity, yet at the end of the day we end in the IMF. which comes with structural adjustment issues. You do recall that the cumulative impact of these indebtedness led us to HIPIC when Kufuor just took over in 2001.
Right.
After a little over a decade afterwards, in 2013, we were compelled to, in our history, go for, one of the most difficult loan agreement with the IMF, which led to the inability of government to employ, creating this whole 3-year backlog recruitment for nurses and teachers, much as that sector, those sectors are very critical.
Right.
Then fast forward under my administration, my government's administration, where we vowed heaven and earth that we were actually not going to go to IMF. We got to a very helpless stage and we had no option than to, in the interest of the country, swallow our pride and go to IMF. So this is just to tell us that borrowings and running to the international financial market is not the way to go. Now, this is the background against which we will be able to discuss the economic numerics of this particular budget.
Right.
You've had a situation where in the past, owing to, fiscal indiscipline, we rose to a debt to GDP ratio of, I think, 104% at some point in this country, just in about towards the end of 2022.
Right.
You do recall that? And some of us even at that time called for the removal of the finance minister because we thought that credibility was in question, we thought that competency was in question, and that was a very turbulent time for this country. In spite of all of these, we were further still confronted with a situation where inflation rose to up to about 53% at some point in this country. So it tells you that critically we have, found ourselves in a kind of situation that was extremely compromising. And we were, of course, at the brink of, losing it all. Now, today, what is the story? We need to go back to the very fundamentals of the economics of our country. Number one, if we are to interrogate the issue of inflation, it's being reported in the current report that inflation have declined to about 22.8%. For me, that is relative to the 53%, that is, foundationally good. Now, you go to a critical area of growth at some point.
Let's stay a bit on inflation.
I think I'll give you a better leverage to be able to interrogate that. Now, because you cannot talk about inflation without talking about economic growth. I mean, coming from an international political economic background, you get to the realization that anytime inflation is particularly high, the economic growth becomes stagnant.
Okay.
Now, if we've been able to resurrect from that stagnancy to doing as much as about 4.2% of growth currently, I think that it's far better than before, especially in the past 2 years, 2022 in particular, which was the cross of all of these turbulence. But let's go back to inflation. Then the critical question to want to ask yourself is whether in reality the decline in the figures of inflation in reports such as what we are interrogating today reflects in the pricing structure of ordinary goods and even services in the economy. For me, the immediate no. I don't see a reflection of a reduction in inflation in what is actually in reality happening in the market there, which tells us that the microeconomic indicators have not, as contained in this arithmetic, have not translated into the reality Ghanaians really want to feel in their pockets. So for me, that is one area my government will still have to work on.
Every person who voted for the New Patriotic Party in 2015 voted with an expectation.
You mean 2016?
2016. Voted with an expectation that the New Patriotic Party would have performed better than the erstwhile John Dramani Mahama administration. They left inflation at 15.4%. Government in this mid-year fiscal review policy or policy review is targeting inflation at 15% by December 2024. If you met inflation at 15% and you are targeting it at 15% by December when we are going for another election,
what was inflation in 2018?
Years, question is, how well have you performed in terms of managing the economy?
So we need to be able to make a judgment of this on the basis of the realities within the sectorial and economic landscapes.
Right.
And of course, the economic landscape as of 2016 was more buoyant than the kind of realities that affected global supply chains. You cannot segregate our situation from that. However, I have been on this platform several, and I said that, look, as part of the issues, we have to be able to analyze the whole economic outlook holistically, taking into consideration not only these parameters, but we have to be able to question, domestic consumption. We have to be able to question government expenditure. We need to interrogate the element of investment. We need to be able to tackle the issue of net export. Is the interaction of these parameters that defines a good government. For me, this government have performed a miracle in recent time, especially in the post-Ken administration, where Adam took over. You realize that these indicators are actually a promise of a better future. But that is not to say that we should be proud that after having inherited a 15% inflation, we are actually now struggling to go back there after 8 years. For me, that is not something we can celebrate. However, the ambitiousness is that in spite of the trends that have bedeviled our economic growth, this is how far we've been able to tackle the situation in order to, stop what appeared to be an escalation. So once we've been able to stop an escalation, it tells you that government is getting back to some form of prudence and common sense in terms of our expenditure. For example, you want to measure the growth of an economy. Government seriousness is measured from what? From what we call the propensity to save, arising from the propensity to consume. Hitherto, to all of these situations we're talking about, especially from 2022, where all these things went bad, you realize that even the power sector was one of the most troubling areas. Today, in this budget, after all of these difficulties, government have been able to renegotiate with the IPPs, that is the independent, power producers, saving the country an amount of about $6.2 billion US, okay, in the raw power purchase agreements. That is something I think that shows a sign of prudence. You go to one of the troubling issues again, which was the $13.1 billion euro bonds. You recall that situation that took over all the media houses. In fact, eventually, listening to Ghanaians, we've been able to work behind the scenes, got back to the international financial market, engage the capital system, renegotiated that to save to have a debt cancellation of $4.7 billion US. What that means in nominal figures is to save the economy a $4.1 million, which otherwise would have been paid or otherwise calculated among our debt threshold. These are some of the prudent measures that have brought us, from 100+ debt to GDP ratio, which almost collapsed the economy, to a 70.6% debt to GDP ratio. Now, in all of these, much as progress have been made, indicating the superior economic prowess of government, I want to say that there are still a lot of ways we can pass towards sustainability. I don't believe in debt repayment. I don't believe in owing today, pay tomorrow, owe tomorrow next. The question we should be asking now is, in order to reduce all of these jargons to sanity and to the benefit of the Ghanaian people, the socio-economic well-being of Ghanaians is predicated on a sustainable and progressive growth of the economy. How do we achieve that? You raised a critical issue with my good friend Doc, and I felt that is an area we should rather be talking about.
Right.
You raised a critical issue concerning the cedi depreciation. Is that correct?
Very well.
Now, that is about the fundamental issue, because you go to any shop, the issue of prices of goods, you go and they tell you, oh, it's the dollar, which is true. Why the dollar? In all of these things, inflation can even come to 1%. It's not going to help the situation until we actually do something about the dollar. So what do we do? Because at the moment, our import-driven economy is the basis for our struggles in real sense. Now, you have a situation where we are practically importing everything, including things we can create, things we can produce, things we can manufacture. What happens to import substitution? which is a more formidable and a more robust approach to solving the situation. I give you examples. In this country, we all eat imported chicken.
Right. We
do imported chicken. In fact, the last index I reviewed with weights few days ago, Ghana is doing $286 million of chicken importation. Are you getting it? Fish and other seafoods doing $145 million. That is just chicken and other frozen foods. Let's go to rice, which we have capacity to produce. Ghana importing in excess of 200,000 metric tons of rice, costing us actually about $313 million. That's awkward. That's just rice.
Right.
Oil and flour, we are doing actually about $172 million. You can verify all of these things even from the Ghana Statistical Services. So I'm not just throwing out figures. Now, the argument I'm making is that if we want to help the situation beyond just figures that don't reflect on the reality of the Ghanaian individual household income, we should be able to, as a matter of fact, cut down on these things. One of the things the NPP government did, which is unsung, that actually got inflation to reduce, was to deliberately, close the system in a manner as to reduce rice importation by some 4 to 1%. That actually happened between 2023 till now. It is the reason we've achieved some of the decline in the figures we are seeing. So it tells us that if government can be intentional and deliberate about this, you realize that once we are able to reduce importation and produce import substitution, then we will be able to boost our net export. Net export will increase the expenditure, it will reduce the expenditure multiplier and increase the propensity to save. That is how much Ghana can save. The amount you are able to save is the degree to which you are actually able to stampede the dollar from outperforming the cedi. Now, why can't our politicians actually do this? We can't do this because most of the import-related businesses belongs to us. So as we benefit from our companies, the rest of the nation is put in trouble, is put in debt. Then we'll end up in parliament lamenting. And another time we'll go for a loan, come and help the situation, and come and say we have performed better. So yes, the NPP have performed better in this regard, but the reality is it sustainable? Has it reflected directly? If no, when? Has that solved the fundamental issue of employment? Has it solved the fundamental issue of rent? Has it solved the fundamental issue of just food from the market? Now you give your wife 100 Ghana cedis a day for market, just for ingredients, you have punished her. Women have become magicians in Ghana just to be able to feed families. And you see, that is creating a system of corruption that goes beyond financial corruption. You know the kind of corruptions we have now: moral corruption, moral bankruptcy, ethical bankruptcy, ethical corruptions. These are the issues. And this is what is happening in countries like Kenya that have anointed the youth to behave in the manner they are behaving. Let us go to one critical area we can again help the situation to save more, to reduce these things. That is procurement leakages. And I get sad when I'm running my background policy related issues. Then you realize that we are still losing 850 million Ghana cedis to procurement irregularities, procurement leakages. So there are more sustainable ways than borrowing from the IMF to seek to have economic and structural stability. I don't believe in going to the IMF. We can actually exonerate ourselves from the shackles of core countries and their deliberate ploy to keep us in a vicious cycle.
Right.
These are what we should be talking about. So yes, it's a good thing to do, and I hope that a future NPP government, we will have a more competent team to be able to even do more than what I have just described as the magic of 2023-2024. So in present of Section 28, this was a mandatory duty. Section 28 of Act 921, that's the Public Financial Management Act 2016. Right. I think that this is better. At least we can say that we've been able to work out what used to be described as a quagmire, and that should be, for me, a piloting basis to shoot from.
Right, thank you so much, Elvis. I'll take few of our messages. I think our time is almost up. This was good evening. Good evening to
we were
the
late.
listeners.
We are sorry about
Yesterday,
that.
the good people of Keta were not happy with the behavior of the finance minister. The finance minister said yesterday that the MPP government completed Keta Sea defense projects. Meanwhile, the MPP government told us they are doing investigations. In fact, Abochi Philip is living in Keta, and there's nothing MPP has done. Abochi Philip from Keta sent in that one. Abochi, thank you so much for your message. This one says, Mohammed Abdul Wahab from Boko, Upper East region, commenting on the running back of our economy. What does that mean? Even they can't. Oh, please. I mean, let's keep our messages very clear and concise so I can read them. There are some few here. Let me take some of the messages from here. This one says, Mr. Justice, please, good evening. My brother, yesterday media budget, it was nothing but empty, useless and baseless budget to we Ghanaians. Ghanaians are watching this new patriotic party government and we are ready to vote against them come December 7, 2024. And please, help me send my greetings to Honorable Abla Jifa Gomashe, MP for K2 South, and Honorable Eric Edem Agbana, NDCPC for K2 North. Andrews sent in this one from Agbozome, K2 South in the Volta region. Let Honorable Afenyo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia know that we in the NDC, we don't wrestle with. Oh, sorry. I mean, you cannot describe them as pigs. I'm sorry. I can't read this message. Be very decorous with your messages. Let's send our messages devoid of insults. Once there is an insult, I mean, trust me, I would not read that message out for anybody. So thank you so much for your message. This one says, this time around, MPP go explain tire. Robert from Agbozome in the Volta region sent in that message. This one says, good evening, Justice. Dr. Bawumia should let his 8 years speak for him rather than campaigning. Sometimes your messages. Good evening, please kindly decline. Well, this is an insult and I would not read it. If you send anything insulting, I would not. Good evening. I'm from Kumasi, Tafo. This one says, okay, I can't read that one. Vip is getting his advice from. Why all this? How on earth would anybody say that the vice president is getting his advice from madmen? Unfortunately, you cannot send that. Please, the messages should be devoid of insults. Good evening, Justice. Let Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia know that it is only a wicked wife who will start cooking at 6:30 a.m. in the morning till 5 p.m. and still telling her husband that he will get satisfied if he endorses her more. Sabodori sent in that one. I think that my time is up. Your final words, and then we go.
I have heard the number of messages you've read,
right,
and the number of messages you actually avoided because of what you describe as insults.
Yeah.
Yes, but I just want to appreciate all of them because frustration can lead to some of what we are witnessing.
Right.
My issue here is that I've enumerated corruption, procurement leakages, and a host of other things that are making it, difficult for government to be able to put us back on the path of sustainability.
Very well.
The promise we are making is that we